Hi, Roya. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, everyone. Today I have a very special guest. This is Roya Caviglia, as in
You got it.
familia, right? We just
Yes.
went over the pronunciation because I wanted to make sure I got it right. And she is a infant communication specialist, which is so exciting because literally this week I also had someone who was specialized in teens. And so now we're going the other end of the spectrum for me. And this is really like infants, right? Like infant communication, which is like super exciting. So Roya, welcome. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm excited. I'm always excited to talk about this. I drop pens and knock over glasses of water whenever I get to talk about this. So let's hope that doesn't happen right now.
That's okay. Hey, I would love for you to just tell everyone a little bit about you. How did you come to be doing this? And what is it that you do? What does an infant communication specialist do?
Okay, so yeah, I came to it from well, my training and my professional career for like the first 15 years was teaching business English in companies, in banks. I've worked in central London, in Switzerland, in Germany, and now we're based in the Netherlands. And I did that like in all those places. And then my focus shifted when we were planning to have a family. So then I opened my own school in the Netherlands, which is quite an easy thing to do, to set up your own business here. So I took advantage of that and started my school, the English Voice Academy, to support international families. So we offered adults courses, also courses for children learning English. And then I had my baby, my little boy, and I was determined to use baby sign language with him. I'd heard about it before. I'd heard about what was happening in America. It's really big over there, and not so much in Europe. And I fell down this great big rabbit hole, big black hole of research. What is this thing? Will it work? You know, is it a waste of time? Will it delay speech? Will it help speech? All the things. And I'm telling you, it worked out fantastically. It was wonderful with my boy. It was so good. It took like a year to sort of get the hang of it, but that was okay because he was developing anyway, and it was great. And what was a big surprise is that it helped with his multilingual language development. And we are a multilingual family because my husband is Italian. I'm from the UK originally, and so that's English. And then we live in the Netherlands. So we knew that, and we were determined also that he would grow up with three languages.
Yeah.
And it bridged the languages beautifully. And what nobody's talking about this. Nobody. So I was like, okay, this is a thing. And then I started running workshops through my school in Delft, in The Hague, for the baby sign language thing. And then we had our daughter, and again with her, phenomenal, just such a great success. And it was easier because, of course, I already knew all the stuff that I didn't know the first time. And so I started to develop my method. And so I actually call it the infant communication method because I'm moving away from baby sign language now. I don't know if we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on, but this is not a language. It's not actually a fully formed language. Yeah. I'm teaching now infant communication, which is a parenting tool, and it will help you in so many wonderful ways, so many benefits, which I can go through now or later or whatever. Yeah.
You choose. You're the one here. I'm so excited. I'm so excited because communication is my
I can just keep talking. Yeah.
Well, no, but communication is totally, is my thing as well. And I really have come into this, all behavior is communication, and that everything that our kids are doing, all the way from the moment of, from the moment you can feel those little flutters in your belly and that they can hear us, we don't have to wait until our kids are verbal to be able to communicate. So I love that you're focusing on it. So tell me more about how it's different between, because you're saying, hey, this is not a language. This is not baby sign language. This is something very different. This is a parenting tool. Tell me more.
Okay. So, well, I work with parents from when they're expecting the baby all the way through to parents who have 2-year-olds, I'd say around 2-3-year-olds is sort of where it sort of tails off. So that's my specialism between being pregnant and having a toddler that's just starting to talk. And once they're in full sentences and gabbling away and they're fine, that's probably past then I would move them over to my language school actually, and then help them with their English. So I keep looking after people. But this particular thing that we're talking about, infant communication, let's say it would start in pregnancy, because everybody, you do hear, talk to your baby while they're in your belly, right? And play music to them and things like this. Did you know that when babies are born, within the first few days, they are crying in their own language, in the pitch of their own language? Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Right? So there's research with they did with French and German babies, they cry at different tones. Okay, so already what you're doing is having an impact. They recognize their mama's voice. So there's also research that shows that newborns, they will move their head or whatever, they will show preference for their mother's voice. So this is all a great place to start. But something else that people don't know about newborn babies, and I didn't know with my first baby, and I wish I had, because he was a slightly more difficult baby than my daughter, and it would have helped. But with newborn, so from like birth to 6 months old, you can read their body language, and it's quite consistent from baby to baby, although we're all individuals. All babies are also individuals, so your baby will have their own things too, but most babies have show you in a similar way that they're hungry, that they're tired, and they need to pee and poo before they start crying. So you don't need to wait for the hunger cry, because there is a hunger cry, right? That's different to the other cries. But you don't have to wait for that cry and recognize it. And you don't necessarily have to do the whole checklist, like, my baby's crying, why? Are they cold? Are they hungry? Is it happy? And we all have that checklist, right? Every parent has that. So you can sort of cut down the guesswork and recognize the body language. So I could give you, like, one example is smacking the lips and looking around. It's the baby's hungry, looking, where's the milk coming from, right? And you can notice these little things that they do and respond to them appropriately. And then if we talk about peeing and pooping, you can actually have your baby holding them over a potty or whatever from birth if you want. And it's just fabulous. Imagine a life with no poo in nappies. Just think about that for a moment.
I can't even imagine that right now.
Let it sink in. Now, I'm not promising there'll be none ever, but you can greatly reduce these things. And this also, you can imagine, has a really nice impact on the environment, because you need less washables, you need less disposables, you need less everything, because you could just flush that stuff down the toilet. So this is the infant newborn phase.
Because what I hear you say right here is actually that it all starts with tuning in, right? That you can see in those first 6 months to tune into your child's body language, because of course I've heard of Dunson's baby language, right? With the 5 different sounds,
cries.
right?
Different sounds.
Different cries, but this is a different nuance. This is looking at their, of course, as part of it is the sounds, but it's also just their posture. And I've seen this, my daughter is now 1. And she's so clear, like you can tell when she's doing her thing, because she goes, like, she does this very like constant face. I know. Exactly. You just know. And this is one of the things that I love, for example, that she's been, and this is one of the benefits of Corona times, is actually that I've been around her way more than my other ones. And so the tuning in and being able to meet her needs so quickly, like, you don't have to worry like that 15, 20 minutes later, oh, she had a poo diaper. Now I get it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to, like, parents want to know their baby's wants and needs, their needs and wants, and they want to respond to them. They do. But sometimes we just, we have to do the checklist. That's what we normally do. But if you don't know what you don't know, but if you know, it can be really handy. So there's
the awareness to start off with, right? Indeed. Once you know that there's something you don't know, what that allows us to actually make the step to, okay, am I going to do something about it, and what to do about it?
And of course, responding to whatever the need is, that's up to the parents. And so it's not me saying, oh, you must take your child on the potty or anything like that. It's just like, if you know that, then you can do something about it, and that's what we all want to be able to do. And you can reduce frustration and crying. Like, actually, when I say frustration in this moment, I mean the parents' frustration, because there will be less crying and there will be less guessing on your part, and it's just a bit more peaceful. Depends on the baby, but generally,
it goes a bit smoother.
Yeah. So for that part, it's really nice also to prepare while you're pregnant or while you're expecting the baby, because then during the sleepless nights part, you already know what you're looking for when you're like sleep fog, and you don't want to have to learn those things. I often encourage parents to do that before the baby arrives. So that's like the really, really infant part. But then around at 6 months old, babies are beginning to connect language. Well, they're beginning to connect meaning with language. So then I mean like single words or signs. So in the method, there are signs, although it's not a baby sign language particularly, but it's sort of similar in this case at this part of my method. So we do use signs with babies. And at this point, you can expect your baby to be reacting to words or signs. So if you tell your baby, milk, do you want some milk? And milk, 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 you should be getting happy face and wriggly baby, because all babies love the milk. I think most babies. There are allergies, I know there are things, but if there's no like issue, your baby loves the milk. So you should be getting happy faces, wriggly, wiggly body, little happy baby, when you say milk's coming. And then if you're using also the sign, you'll see that they're reacting to the sign. This is milk, like it's milking a cow. Milk. And you can add in there as many signs as you want, but not a full whole language. It's just the signs that are going to help you in that moment where you are. So the signs that you need to make things go more smoothly in your own family. Practical. And it could be an individual choice. Yeah, it's all about being practical. Actually, the method is not about the signs, it's about the communication. Focus on the communication. So it really depends on you and your family and what your needs are and what your baby's needs are. And then moving on, baby's growing up a bit older. So you said your baby just turned a year old? She's a year, yeah. So from 9 months, again, it's I say at 6 months, at 9 months, but it can happen much earlier and much later because babies are individuals. Okay, so also it goes back to the individual family. Yeah. But around 9 months, 12 months, babies start waving and pointing and maybe clapping. And people don't sit down and teach their babies how to do that. All babies just pick those things up because they see them happening around them. And they have the motor skills to copy them, right? So it might not be, the wave might not be perfect at the beginning, but they're learning how to do it. And you can see and you get excited, oh, it's waving goodbye, it's so cute. And that is a really lovely moment to include a lot more signs. So signs for things that your baby loves or needs, or that will answer a common cause of frustration or crying. Yeah. It could be that the baby really loves their dummy, then sign for the dummy. Or it could be we had a lady the other day in my Facebook group that was saying that her baby was crying for a while and she couldn't figure out what it was, thought it was nappy, changed the nappy, and then after like an hour brought them their lovely bear, their little bear that they loved. An instant, oh, the bear, oh, happy baby. And so they were then incorporating a sign so that the baby could ask for the lovey. So this is really, really nice, and every child has their own favorite thing. So
exactly, and that's again coming back to the tuning in. It's also being like super practical, and you're trying to make your life as a parent easier, because we already have enough going on, not only with the first baby where you're doing all the guesswork and learning everything like totally new, but then when you get a second child or a third child, you're dealing with dynamics and kids with different needs, and being able to respond to our kids and what they need just makes our lives easier too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's also lovely is that parents are much more confident then, because they feel like, so another benefit is that it really strengthens your bond, because you know each other better, and it makes you feel more confident in how things are going, because you're able to respond appropriately to the needs and the wants without it being the crying thing and then doing the checklist, or without it being for older children because older children, when you're getting from 1 to 2 children, by then they know an awful lot about what's going on around them, but they're not able to verbalize their thoughts. Yeah. Maybe a word here or there, if they want mama, they can say mama. At a year old, that's when they get their first word. And what's really interesting for bilingual children and multilingual children, it's the same. So at 12 months on average, a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but that's when you'd expect the first word to emerge for both monolingual and multilingual children. And that's also then when frustrations start, because baby knows what baby wants and mommy doesn't. And baby cannot tell mommy because the verbalization hasn't come along yet, because it just takes longer. The development of all the muscles that we have here, the hundreds of muscles that we have here, just takes longer than being able to control their hands. So giving them that power to tell you what they want also makes a confident baby too, but it just makes everything easier.
Yeah.
And then we get from, so from 1 to 2 year old, then perhaps if you're a multilingual family like us, you have we have Papa speaking Italian, you have me speaking English, and then you can start to see how the signs that we've introduced bridge the languages.
Yeah.
And so it makes it really clear to the baby that there are two separate languages, because like the word milk and the word latte are both, well, I'm losing two hands. They're both getting the same sign. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's one sign, two words. Okay, what's going on here? So it's a bridge. The sign is bridging the languages. They know that when they see this, they get milk, but they also hear two different words. So it's bridging the languages, but it's also keeping them separate, and that really, really helps.
Yeah, that's such an amazing tool, right? Like I know when we first talked to each other that this came up, and it was just kind of one of those things that was like, oh, that makes so much sense, because I remember very vividly being in the tram with my son on the way to daycare, and he was going to Dutch daycare, and we were really having a very serious, he was, I think, two and a half at the time, very serious discussion about whether something was zwart or black. And I was just trying to confirm with him. He was like, look, Mama, it's zwart, which is black in Dutch. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I was confirming it. I was like, it's black, because I was keeping, English is the language. He was like, nee, Mama, zwart. And he was like getting really worked up, because in his mind, they were like completely separate things. So I can imagine that, I mean, of course, I think signing maybe a color or that's a little bit more complex, but having more of the tools that he would, for example, know a sign that could bridge those language would give them more the ability to know, this language belongs to this person or this context. And exactly what you said, I like the image of a bridge between them.
It's a bridge. It's a lovely bridge. And like, your child was a little bit older there, so colors you can introduce a bit later, because they are slightly more abstract. But the things we mainly focus on, so in this in my method, say, are things that are much more concrete. So it's milk, it's bed, it's really simple, concrete, the lovely toy, and many more, of course, the favorite food or banana. But then things like colors can come in next, and then things that are more abstract can come in even later. It can be a nice way to sort of start introducing emotions, but then that's for an older child, and it's a bit later, and it's a slightly different approach. But we've been having lots of success with this, and I have like international families on my course who are now coming back and saying, oh yeah, this, they're signing, or they're reacting to the signs, and it seems like so far we have 100% success rate. I'm going to say it, we do. Every family, of course, has seen it make a difference. So,
it does. And I can imagine that then you're also moving with your child. Like, you don't have to, in your method, it's not then, oh, this is the only sign for this. You can kind of, because what I noticed is after we had a conversation, I was paying more and more attention, because I want to introduce more of the signing and the communication, not just for my daughter, because I used it with my oldest son, and then not with my middle child, but now again with him, because I want to teach her brothers also how to communicate with her, because then they can also understand, I think she wants this, and they're coming with this already, because we do a lot with communication at home. But I noticed that she was doing that sign that you do for milk, is her way of saying hello. Because we've always been doing this at her. We just started doing this. So she does this as saying hello. And I was like, I think it would be really confusing to then start referring to that as milk. So I'm just rolling with it. But I noticed that she does this. She's like, I want more. I want more. She like, it's very enthusiastic. But she also uses it for again, when her brothers do something like really funny. She's like, oh, do that again. So what about like things like, okay, so I'm now getting really excited. I'm getting a little bit into too detail, but I love that you have 1,000%, success rate, 1,000%.
1,000%. That's it. That's what we've got.
But what are 5, like if you were to say, hey, these are super practical ones to start with. I know you have a guide, which I'm going to, when I post this interview, I will put the link so that people can download that guide from you. But what are like the most common things that you find help parents who are coming to you and they're like,
start here. So I have the 5 most useful signs. That's the guide, so you can link to it. So hold on a second. Actually, before I talk about that, I really like what you just said about your baby inventing signs, and we're totally for that. So if your baby is communicating and you understand what the invented sign means, go with it, because it means that they've understood. They've understood that you're communicating with them, and they've understood that if they consistently make some kind of hand movement, you'll be able to connect it to the meaning, and then you'll understand them. This is what it's all about. And this is what I mean, again, when I said before, it's not about the science, it's about the communication. This is really important. And lots of babies do invent signs. My son invented them. So we, like, the sign for music is, now it's just completely gone out of my head. But anyway, my son was like doing this and saying uka, uka. And we were like, what is this uka, uka? And then he was doing this. It's musica, which is Italian, uka. And then we realized that when I dance like this. And he was doing my dance. Oh, I think music, it's like conducting is something like this. Like the sign that I would usually teach. And we just went with it because why would you unteach him something that works? It works. So it's really, the focus is on communication. Yeah. So then, and I have lots of examples of babies making up signs. It's amazing. Okay, anyway, I can
imagine that the standard language is nice when you have multiple caregivers involved. So I'm thinking, like, especially if you're talking about kids going to daycare, that maybe again in about talking about communication, that's one of the things we can bring up and kind of go into that conversation and be like, hey, we are doing this at home. And these are some of the ways you can communicate with my child, because I don't think it's one of those standard things that's in, at least here in the daycare system.
No, it's not. And I gave a workshop in a daycare here in Delft. It's an international daycare, so that aligned really beautifully with what I'm doing. And I taught them 15 signs, really practical ones. And actually, we had this discussion during the workshop because somebody was like, oh, but I know this sign is a bit more like this, because there are differences in sign languages. British Sign Language is not the same as American Sign Language, it's not the same as Dutch Sign Language. So then we started to go down that route. And everybody was then pitching into their ideas of what the sign should be. And the director and me sort of looked at each other, and I was like, do you want it to be like usually my method would have some flexibility for the individual family, but this is a daycare situation, so what do you want it to be? And the director said, just tell them what it is, and everybody here has to use the same thing. And so that's what we went with, and that works better in a daycare situation. And totally talk to your daycare. So when my son started, we made a list of the 5 most important signs, which probably I think it was slightly different because of his own personal needs, the ones that he was performing. So you don't necessarily have to tell them like all the signs that you've ever learned, just the ones that you know that your son might sign during the day, so that they understand it. And that if they see it, they know what it means, just that they're aware. They don't even have to even like learn them or perform them or anything unless they want to, but that they can see that if he's doing, if the child is doing something with their hands, it does actually mean something. And it sometimes takes a little while for them to believe it, but they might do if you keep telling them. And you might find a daycare like this one. Shout out to True Colors. True Colors in Delft had me in, and it's just great. And it's been 2 years now, and they're still using the signs, and they still are in contact with me and sending me messages like, oh, we're so glad we used the signs because this happened or that happened, and they're having good experiences.
And it gives them tools. It gives them, it's the same as, daycares have a lot. I'm always like super impressed by daycare workers. I was like, I have sometimes issues handling, my 3 at the same time, or even like when I went from 1 to 2, like that was already big. I was like, how are they handling like 9 kids at the same time? And now I've, when I'm walking home sometimes with school, and each of my kids is bringing a friend, and then all of a sudden I realize I have 5 kids with me too.
You're outnumbered.
Actually, more is not worse. They help entertain each other, which is a really fun insight. Now I understand why people keep having kids. My husband is kind of like, no more kids. I'm like, oh, but it's, it gets easier. But the thing is, I imagine it gives them tools to, if I'm hitting this roadblock with a kid, if I have a kid who's super frustrated or crying all the time, and I can't figure it out, that it gives them just a little bit more tools than your standard, okay, let me run through my checklist.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can give you 2 little examples of that from the daycare, directly from the daycare. One teacher was really worried about a child that was beginning to bite other children, and she was convinced that the issue was a frustration communication problem, because the baby was from another language group, so not English, not Dutch, which are the 2 languages of the daycare, and come straight in and was just like, I think, lost. So it was coming out like that, and they knew that there was frustration, and they wanted to reduce it, and they really felt that was going to help. And then the other example I can think of is a really nice one that one of the daycare teachers, she emailed me a few months ago to tell me about. So they were coming in from outside play, one little boy didn't want to come in, and then the idea is that they come in, they use the potties, they wash their hands, and then they get their snack. And there's this one boy just threatening, sort of, she could see he was about to melt down, not quite going well. I'm not sure if he'd already started with the crying and the shouting, but then she just started to sign to him, toilet, come on, let's go to the toilet, toilet dancing, let's go. And it just diffused the situation. He found it funny. He signed it back, and he came in, and everything was fine. And she knew that child, and she was convinced that they had avoided a big tantrum, just like that.
And it's when you bring that in, it's really interesting because that ties into what I teach in my course, actually. And one of the like most powerful tools that you can use as a parent or a caregiver, right, is humor, right, in how you're doing, and making things fun. So like combining, I can imagine that for people who maybe it's not their default of being, the funny or the goofy person, that it gives them again something that they're like, I know a sign for this. What can I do like to move the situation along? Because it's to keep things in flow, right? To keep everything in a flow of the day. And when you've got a whole bunch of kids, or even one, and you've got to get the other one out the door and they don't want to, and you're having all this resistance, like how can you help create the understanding as well, right? Because when we're talking communication, it's a flow, and it's also letting my kid know, I get you. I get that something is not okay for you, that you may be frustrated, maybe you want to play outside longer, because this is also really important, right? Recognizing their feelings, their what they're going through, and you're like, how can we move through this together?
Exactly, because otherwise you get in a standoff, and a standoff is never a good thing.
Yeah, and I think this is super relevant. I think a lot of so I work more with around 1.5, 2 is when people start coming to me usually, or when they get a second child that adds to the mix. And that's such a key phase in development, right? That become between 1 and 2, when they're starting to get verbal, exactly what you said, they're starting to understand a lot more of what's going on around them. What are some of the key things that you think would help parents who are dealing with changes, exactly like the example you gave, right, with the biting? Like, what are common things that your infant communication can support parents in moving through that?
So, well, giving the child a voice when they don't actually have one yet. So, maybe that child cannot that child that was biting could not verbalize that they were hungry or tired or thirsty or any of the most simple things. So you can introduce those. It doesn't have to be hundreds. It could just, if you start with thirsty and hungry, perhaps with a slightly older child, tired. Depends on the child. My son is never tired. Like, apparently he doesn't sleep. He's an owl, he tells us. So it does depend on the kid. So yes, the whole sleep sign never worked with him. But my daughter, it did. She can tell us she's had enough. She's tired. She wants to go. She wants to be in her room. She wants to be alone. She's 3, and she knows when she's had enough, and she can tell us, and she will put herself to bed. It's like, okay, great. And that's her thing. And so, it does depend on the child. But I think that the child that is getting frustrated to the point that they're biting, it's really nice to see when it's happening, try and figure out why it's happening, and then give them a voice. So if it's happening because another kid is taking their toy, perhaps you can teach them please. Or if it's happening that they have a favorite toy, that is the ball, and that's their comfort thing maybe at the daycare, is that one toy. Like sometimes the children, like my son had a car, and he just had to have that car at the daycare, and he understood that it stayed there, it wasn't from home, but he always wanted that car. So if you consign ball or car, whatever the thing is, that they can tell you that that's important to them.
So it's not only the communication. What I'm getting is, it's again that tuning in and looking at what is the underlying need, like what is underneath that behavior, like what is going on. And then what you do is you take that step, you're like translating it into some way of being able to express that. So exactly that, the giving them a voice to be able to say, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want. And of course, dependent on the age and how they're doing things, because I think it's really fascinating, the differences in character, right? Like I've got the same thing. I've got a 6-year-old who now has come and said, I think I need to go to bed later, because he's like the last few nights just laid in bed awake for like an entire hour, and he's really not sleepy. And so, but that he can give voice to, I think I need to have a later bedtime, and how about we do this? And he'll come with solutions of how it can be and what things he can do. And
I know, and I think giving them the voice and listening to the voice is really important, that you acknowledge what they want. But it doesn't mean as a parent that you're giving away like your your power as a parent. Maybe that's not quite the right word, but you can still say no. You know, this is, you can't have the ball right now, or this is not your bedtime. I mean, there's still family harmony, but the point is that you are able to make that connection with the child, and then you can deal with it in the appropriate way. Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I think. Yeah.
I have this discussion that comes up a lot, by the way, that parents are super worried that if they recognize that their kid wants something, then they have to give it to them.
No.
And there's so many ways to deal with that, right? Like, so what I love is, and I would love to just, you know, like stack on what you're saying, because I think just recognizing the need and knowing that it's there, that's already important. Of course, what you do with it, that's like a separate thing. And I think everyone has to make their own decisions in the family. You know, we're working with people who have lots of different cultures, lots of different ways of doing things, lots of different family values. Like, you know, is it important for you that the whole family sits at the table together until they're done? Or is it okay that when the kids are done, that they leave? And, you know, all that sort of different thing. Like, there's no right way or wrong way, and there's different family dynamics to deal with that. Absolutely. What you're saying though is, let's give them tools to talk. Let's give them tools to express themselves. And that's really like the key, because that's going to carry on. This is, again, building blocks with, I have a voice.
Yeah. And I'm really sure. So, okay. So 2 things that can continue from this is, one, I'm really sure that this has a really good impact on the terrible twos, although I'm not really, by then, most of my infant communication parents have, you know, they've flown and they're doing other things, but I'm really sure that this has a knock-on effect. And in our experience, it did. We never had any terrible twos, actually. No. It went very smoothly. We did have meltdowns for like overwhelm or overtired or hungry. Those things, you're not going to get rid of meltdowns completely, but we always knew why and what was happening, and it was really clear. It wasn't just this random sort of like, why on earth, you know, why are they saying no? Why is this happening? And it was all the frustration that comes with that.
But how awesome is that? How awesome is that you could actually say to parents, like, actually, you would probably make me redundant, right? Like, you would be like, if you come to me and you like start communicating with your kids already early on and you give them choices and everything, guess what? You won't have any terrible twos. I mean, I can imagine that there's all these parents out there like, yes, I want that.
Yeah, let's solve the terrible twos. Between us, we can do it, Johanna. This is it, Johanna. This is our mission. Let's get rid of the terrible twos. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, I had a lovely piece of feedback from mum that now I'm thinking of it. I need to bring it out and put it on the Instagram or something. I have to bring it back. So it's from like a year or so ago, and it was one of my first mums, whose daughter now is 6 or 7. I'm not really sure. And last year, so when her kid was around 4 or 5, her daughter was maybe 5. She'd already started school. She sent me this beautiful piece of feedback saying about how her daughter was just so much more confident, how it had a knock-on effect like her whole life. Like, she's really convinced that it was part of her personality, and it was just like, oh, like that. I don't know. I didn't know how it was going to have an effect with all the children, because, you know, when I started doing all of this thing, I just had my own first baby, and I think this method is getting better and better. I think it's getting better.
But this is beautiful, because I think this comes back to one of the things that you mentioned earlier, which is, you know, the confidence as a parent. Because the thing is, a lot of the time, and I have this a lot as well, like the moms that are just, they're doubting, they have no idea what to do. Like, what is the right way to set boundaries? What is the right way to talk to my kid in this? So it's coming back to giving confidence to the parents that, you know what, I'm doing something that is going to support at least having open communication channels with my child, with setting the, you know, really laying a solid foundation to move into the future together. And I think that has so much value in it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really hope, I read this thing recently, something where, like, you know, if you're not listening to your child when they're really small, like, things that are important to them sometimes are not that important to us, let's be real. But you know, we need to make an appointment, and we need to make an effort to sort of tune into those things even when we can, and at least find some moments to really be like, okay, this thing, you love this thing, it's important to you. Because otherwise, you know, when they get to teenagers and they have issues, or they, you know, then they just stop talking, and we don't want them to stop talking, or we need them to know that they can come to us. And so I haven't got there yet, but I really hope that this is going to have, you know, something that goes all the way through, and it means that we're going to have a really nice open communication also.
But this is exactly it, because I, like I said, I had this conversation with someone who her specialty is working with teenagers, and we were having this conversation exactly about laying those foundations. And she said to me, like, man, if you were doing what, you know, if parents started when they were working with you. And I want to take that back even further. If parents started when they were working with you, like when they were already pregnant, right? Like imagine it's all about also building the right habits and the right way of doing things from the beginning, because it's not just for our kids. We're undoing years and years of habits and doing things the wrong way, and maybe, you know, reactive communication instead of, you know, openness, if you're talking like, you know, nonviolent communication, things like that, right? So it's also for us giving ourselves, like being patient and giving ourselves, like you said, with your son, it took a year to get really into the rhythm of it. Give ourselves time. Like we don't have to go from no communication to doing things completely differently from one day to the next. It's about slow, steady progress and making sure that we're tuning in, we're keeping the channels of communication open. We're really focusing on, hey, I want to create that bonded relationship with my child. So indeed, that further down the road, when they are hitting those more difficult, bigger problems, right? Because they say small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems, that they will at least know that the channels of communication are open and that they can talk to us.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think the thing that also that I love about my method is it's simple. It's a really simple thing. You're not learning a whole other language. It's not adding a whole, like, it's not like you're with your baby, you're singing to them, you're talking to them anyway. So add in a few, you know, a few signs and just look at them. And when you're looking at them, they're not just cute, but look at what they're doing and what it could mean. You know, it's not really, really difficult to do. It's just, again, what you don't know, you don't know. So I would like everyone to know it.
I love this because I'm coming back to the, you know, again, our own situations the closest to us. And when I say to my husband now often that I'm like, but our daughter is such a clear communicator. And I'm realizing when I'm saying that, I'm like, is she the one who's clear communication? Or because I focus so much on communicating things, am I just more tuned in with this? Like literally, it's taken me to my third child to realize that communication was there all along.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think this is also a lovely thing for, you know, it also aligns really well with other parenting methodology, like the Montessori method, or also the RIE sort of parenting, this respect for the baby. You know, your baby is a person. They're already a person. It's not just like this helpless crying thing that you have to deal with for a year before they become a person. Like, you know, yeah, I really like it, and I love babies, and I think we learn so much. We learn so much from them. I learned so much from my babies. I feel like that. So I just think it's beautiful, and I hope more people tune in.
I love it. I love it.
I don't want it to be like I'm implying that people don't know that their babies are people, but I don't know. My daughter, you know, she came to me. She's 3, and when she was around, I don't know, 2.5 at daycare, she came back and she was like, oh, I used the toilet all by myself today. I didn't need any help from the teacher. You know, I didn't even need to be. I could get on by myself. She was so happy. And I was like, oh, okay. And what about the other children? You know, are you the only one, or the other children can do it by themselves too? And she's like, well, some people need help, but some people they don't. And the thing that got me is that she called them people. You know, it wasn't the other children or the other, you know, how often do we call children people? It's just, I don't know, it got me.
Well, my son uses it a lot, but I think that's indeed because of the way we communicate at home. But indeed, I love the perspective that the babies are people.
She knows she's a person. Yeah, she knows she's a person already, and she's 2.
I love it. Okay, we've had so many. Like, my brain is going crazy. I think there's a lot of awesome things to take out of this chat that we've had. If you were like, okay, what's a resource, like a book or a website or something that you would say, hey, if someone wants to learn more about, and also it could be yours, right? I know you have the free guide that I'll put in. But if someone were to be like, you know, because this is what's fantastic. I remember what you were saying is this is not researched well enough, right? That especially how infant communication is applicable to a multilingual situation, which I think is for a lot of the people that I'm working with also really a thing. Like, you know, sometimes up to like 4 or 5 languages. Like, what's a good resource to start with?
Okay, so for multilingual families using some form of sign or, focused on communication in this way, there is no research. I haven't come across any, and I've been looking.
Yeah.
And I have contacts, like I know you interviewed recently Ute, and I talked with her about it, and she actually used the word last week, groundbreaking, which sort of blew my mind. Like, this is really exciting, what we're doing, and so I kind of consider her a good reference because she knows the research. Then there is research with using signs for children like Down syndrome children, for example. They often use signing, and I think now it's moving more into children with disabilities are using it for communicating. But in the field that I'm doing, this research is very few and far between. I wrote a book. It's not a very long one, but I've written a book. It's available on Amazon, and it's I wrote it when I was pregnant, or I think after my daughter was born. And it was like I really, really wanted to put everything down because I was scared that my kids would get big and I would forget it all. So I wrote it, and I had a lovely editor, Julia, who was she was on maternity, I think, at the time, and she was working in communications for Dyson, the vacuum cleaner people. So I was like, I have the woman. And so we worked together. It was great. And she was also applying some of the things with her baby. So that is available on Amazon, and I actually made it available for free because I am super passionate about getting this out there. And so that book is on Amazon. It's on all the Amazons. It's free everywhere. It's actually also on all other, I think it's on iBooks or all the other.
I will make sure that the link is being posted with this interview so that people can find your book.
There will be a
find your guide. Because
my guide, so there's my guide. That's getting started. If you want to get started today, right now, learn your first sign. You can learn 5 most important signs. That's on my website, which is babysignlanguagecourse.com. And I think those would be the 2 resources to start with. We have a really big, I consider it really big. It's like around 1,000 now. We have a lovely Facebook group with lots of really, committed mums who are dads too. Majority mums, so who are working on this stuff, and so asking questions in there is always a good idea.
Fantastic.
And then I think as a wider thing, then it could be nice to check out the RIE, respectful parenting. It's not perfect. There are some things that but I think it had a big effect on me and the way that I parent, and also the Montessori method, of course. And in the Netherlands, that's very accessible. We have our children in Montessori schools, so this is another thing, that children are capable, and they are capable people. They're not helpless, they're dependent, and this had a big effect on the way that I thought about my own children. And I think that also is a big part of where this method came from.
And I think that is a beautiful closing thing, unless you have any other amazing words of wisdom, but to look that people are, that children are people, and they are capable already of more than we could ever imagine.
Much more than we know. And I'm sure that I'm only scratching the surface. I think kids are amazing.
Love it. Oh, thank you so much, Roya. I think that's a beautiful point to kind of just round off our chat. And I hope that everyone has just gotten, like, I know my mind is like reeling, and I'm like, oh, and I got to go look at this, and I got to go look at this. Yeah, I know, so much going on up here. Right. And I want to go try it out. Right. So, thank you so much for joining today. And I'm really looking forward to working with you again in the future. I think we have
to do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get these big moves out the way. And
all right. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.